Police dog barks at the restroom door at airport. Officers kicked it open and found a little girl. But what happened next? The afternoon at the international airport was always packed with people. Everything was in constant motion. The sound of the loudspeaker calling flights, the grating of suitcase wheels on the stone floor, the hurried steps of shoes, and the intermingling sounds of children laughing and crying. Amidst this scene, Officer Collins and his police dog, Arrow, slowly patrolled along the corridor of Terminal C. The two had been working together for over 4 years. And to Collins, Arrow was more than just a dog. He was a friend, a partner, a second pair of eyes that always saw what humans missed. Arrow was a robust German shepherd with sleek, gray-brown fur and a steady gait, rarely losing his composure. He had participated in dozens of arrests and rescues, once sniffed out a suitcase full of drugs among hundreds of others, and had also found a lost child, miles away in the forest. But today, the task was just a routine security patrol, ensuring no suspicious passengers or prohibited items slipped through the checkpoints. The work was simple, peaceful, and steady like any other day. Collins walked beside him, leash in hand, his eyes scanning the waiting area. He lifted his radio to exchange a few short words with the command center, then leaned down to speak softly to Arrow. "Another boring shift, huh, buddy?" Arrow glanced at him, wagged his tail slightly, and continued to stride forward. Everything was so calm that Collins started thinking about the coffee he hadn't had time to drink at the start of his shift. They passed the women's restroom area, where a few people were constantly going in and out. Nothing special. A mother with her young daughter, a janitor pushing a floor cleaning cart, a few passengers washing their hands. Collins merely glanced over, out of habit, preparing to move on. But right at that moment, Arrow stopped. A sudden halt, the leash yanking Collins's arm. He frowned. "What is it, buddy?" Arrow didn't respond with his usual friendly look. His ears were straight up, his nose trembled slightly, his head lowered a bit, and his whole body was tense like a spring ready to snap. Collins looked in the direction he was focused on, just a row of closed restroom doors, completely normal. He thought perhaps Arrow had caught a strange scent, food, perfume, or cleaning chemicals. But only a few seconds later, the dog's reaction made him change his mind. Arrow gave a low growl in his throat, a small but prolonged moan. Then he moved forward in slow, cautious steps, his eyes fixed on the last stall door in the inner corner. His tail was lowered, his head dipped lower, and his nose was continuously sniffing. Collins followed, feeling the leash tighten in his hand. He understood this expression. It wasn't typical curiosity. Arrow had detected something wrong. "What's in there?" he asked, his voice low. Arrow did not take his eyes off the door. A woman who had just exited saw the scene and flinched slightly. "Oh, a police dog? Is there a problem?" Collins gave a polite smile. "No problem, just a routine check." But inside, he no longer felt at ease. Arrow took another step. He sniffed hard, then suddenly let out a growl, a short, low, and sharp sound like a knife. Next, he pulled the leash hard, heading towards the last stall door. Collins immediately tensed up, his other hand reaching for the radio. He carefully observed the area. No sound from inside, no one coming in or out, but clearly Arrow was refusing to move away. "Easy, Arrow." He spoke, but his voice was strained. Arrow growled again, this time more fiercely. He lunged forward, his claws scraping on the floor with a screeching sound. A chill ran down Collins's spine. He had seen Arrow act like this before, only when he smelled blood, fear, or the scent of someone in desperation. He lowered his voice and spoke into the radio. "Control, this is Collins. I am at the Terminal C women's restroom. Abnormal behavior. May require inspection. Send another officer for backup." From a speaker, his colleague's voice replied, "Received. Sending someone immediately." Collins held the leash tight, his eyes never leaving Arrow. The dog started to whine, a heavy, urgent sound. He wasn't scared. He was trying to signal something. A few nearby passengers stopped and looked over. A girl whispered, "What's going on?" Collins gestured for people to keep their distance. He walked up and tapped lightly on the last door, the one Arrow was staring at. Police! Is anyone inside? No answer. He knocked harder, his voice raised. Excuse me, we need to confirm safety. If someone is there, please respond. Still silence. Arrow lowered his head close to the gap under the door, took a deep breath, and then suddenly let out a husky, choked-up whine. Collins took half a step back, his heart racing. He was used to the peace, but the dense silence behind this door made the air around them freeze. A cleaning staff member approached, looking confused. I saw this door locked a long time ago. It's a bit strange because a few minutes ago a man with a little girl went in, and then he came out. Alone. Collins's head snapped up, his eyes hardening. What did you say? A man went into the women's restroom. Yes, I thought he was looking for his daughter. Arrow suddenly tugged the leash hard, barking sharply, and lunged toward the door as if to smash it open. Collins held on tight, his voice deepening and firm. Step back. Everyone clear the area immediately. The crowd stirred. A few people retreating in panic. Arrow continued to bark, each one more urgent than the last, echoing through the wide corridor. Collins took a deep breath, pressed close to the door, trying to listen. No sound of footsteps, no running water. Only Arrow's breath and the faint sound of the airport loudspeaker from afar. A cold sensation crept up his spine. Collins knew well when Arrow reacted like this, there was always a reason. In those brief seconds, amidst the busy crowd, a suffocating silence opened up, and Collins realized what was waiting behind that door was more than just a strange smell. It was the sign of an impending storm. Arrow suddenly let out a deep, heavy growl that startled the nearby passengers. He yanked the leash, his whole body straining towards the last restroom stall door in the row. Collins tried to hold him back, but Arrow was too strong, every muscle on his back taut like steel wires. Then the barking began, urgent, fierce, echoing through the corridor. The area, which had been noisy with flight announcements, suddenly paused for a few beats. Collins lunged forward, gripping the leash, his eyes rapidly scanning the area. No one came out, no sound from inside. Arrow still barked incessantly, each one more desperate, his front paws scraping forcefully on the floor, his head bowed, close to the door gap, as if trying to pierce through the wood. Collins knocked hard on the door. Police! Is anyone inside? No reply. Only the resonance of Arrow's barking, urgent and choked, like a warning. A group of curious passengers stopped to watch, some pulling out their phones to record. Collins turned his head and gestured. Everyone please step back. This is a security inspection area. He knocked hard again, his voice sterner. If anyone is in there, please respond. If you need help, speak up. Still silence. Arrow took a strong breath, then whined, a hoarse sound coming from his throat, full of frustration and impatience. Collins was familiar with that sound, not barking out of fear, but sensing the fear of others. Arrow crouched low, his tail down, ears straight up, his eyes bloodshot. He barked louder, then clawed fiercely at the door gap, paint chips flaking off in small pieces. At that moment, a janitor rushed over, looking flustered. What's going on? Officer, this door, has anyone used it recently? The woman wiped her hands on her apron and quickly replied, I saw it locked for a while, maybe more than 20 minutes. At that time, I also saw a man with a little girl go in. Then he came out alone. I thought the girl was still inside with her mother. Collins froze. He looked back at the door, then at Arrow. The dog was still, barking nonstop, his eyes on maximum alert. All the pieces were fitting together in his head. A man, a child, a locked door for 20 minutes, and Arrow's frantic reaction. There was no longer any doubt. Someone was in danger inside. He pulled out his radio, his voice brief and decisive. Control, this is Collins at Terminal C, Women's Restroom. Possible emergency situation. Send additional support team and lock down this entire area. Copy that. Rapid response team is arriving in 3 minutes. Collins turned to the janitor. Where is the master key? In the technical room. I'll run and get it. No, you stay here. Do not leave this area. We might be dealing with an abduction. The employee turned pale with fear, backing away. Colin stood opposite the door, his eyes still fixed on Arrow. The dog was no longer barking continuously but switched to a low whine, his nose pressed against the gap, his breathing shallow. Then suddenly he snapped his head up, barking 3 short, continuous times, a special signal reserved for urgent situations involving children. Collins's heart pounded. He quickly ran to the nearby surveillance camera area, asking the security staff to replay the footage from 30 minutes ago. The screen showed a man wearing a gray jacket with a crossbody bag leading a girl about 7 years old into the restroom. A few minutes later, the same man walked out but alone. He walked fast, didn't look back, and disappeared into the crowd. Collins looked at Arrow and said softly, "Good job, buddy. I trust you." He returned to the restroom area, his voice giving orders. "Lock down this entire area. No one is allowed in. If the suspect is still around, he won't escape." Another security officer arrived, setting up the cordon and directing passengers to the nearby restroom. Many people standing far away were still talking, some panicked, some silently watching. Arrow was now standing right next to the door, his back arched, his eyes blazing red. Collins walked over, knelt down beside him, and placed a hand on his head. "Listen to me, Arrow. Stay calm. We'll open the door right away." But Arrow couldn't calm down. He clawed harder, each thump echoing like a persistent drumbeat in the corridor. Collins looked around. The support team hadn't arrived, and the master key wasn't there yet. He clenched his fist, his mind racing, calculating every second. The girl might be locked inside, he quickly told his colleague. If so, we can't wait any longer. He turned to Arrow. "Hold on, buddy. I get it." Arrow whined, then used both front paws to claw at the door gap, his claws digging deep into the wood. He barked fiercely, each sound tearing through the thick air. Sweat ran down Collins's forehead, and he pulled out his radio again. "Control. Emergency situation. Possible victim trapped inside. I will breach the door if there is no response within the next 30 seconds. Another voice came over the radio. "Authorized to act if life-threatening risk is confirmed." Collins turned back, knocking one last time. "Police. If anyone is in there, speak up." Still not a sound. Only Arrow, growling, barking, a husky whine, heavy breathing mixed with the scent of tension. His tail was low, his body trembled slightly, his eyes seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. In that moment, Collins knew they couldn't wait any longer. He took a step back, gripped the doorknob tightly, ready to force it open. Arrow strained forward, his teeth clenched, his eyes never leaving the cold wooden door. The air in the corridor seemed to freeze. Passengers held their breath. Arrow let out one final whine, then clawed hard at the door gap, paint dust flying, the echoing bark sending a chill down everyone's spine. In his blazing red eyes, Collins saw only one thing. Inside there, someone needed to be saved, and time was running out. Arrow's barking was urgent, sharp like an alarm siren. Collins didn't wait any longer. He gave a firm command, his voice resonating through the crowded corridor. "Kick it open." 2 security officers immediately moved. Close. Collins stepped back, drawing his baton to assist. The first kick slammed hard into the metal door, making a sharp sound. Arrow barked fiercely, straining forward, pulling the leash so hard that Collins had to grip it tightly. The second kick, the hinge screeched, the edge of the door sprung open a small crack. The third kick, the door burst open forcefully, hitting the wall, the sound echoing throughout the restroom. White light from the corridor flooded in, shining directly into the space inside. Humid air and the smell of bleach rushed out. Collins raised his hand to signal distance, then stepped in. Arrow darted ahead like a flash of lightning, his nose pressed close to the floor. A voice gasped, "Oh my God!" In the corner of the stall, a little girl was curled up, her hands tied with plastic zip ties, her mouth taped shut, her eyes wide with fear. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair matted with sweat. Seeing the light, she flinched and drew herself in, her breath ragged. Arrow stopped barking. He immediately let out a soft whine, then slowly walked towards the girl, his body low, his head tilted to one side, the familiar calming gesture he used with young victims. He gently licked her bound wrist, as if saying, "It's okay. I'm here." Collins knelt down right beside her, quickly pulling out his specialized knife to cut the ties. "It's okay. You're safe now. Don't be scared." The girl instinctively pulled her hand back, her eyes brimming with tears, her body trembling all over. Collins spoke softly, his voice even and gentle-like, soothing a child. "I'm a police officer. This is Arrow, my dog. We'll take you out." He cut the last tie, then gently peeled the tape from her mouth. As the adhesive came off, she gasped for a deep breath like someone emerging from underwater. Tears immediately welled up, mixing with her shaky breaths. "What's your name?" Collins asked. Her voice was hoarse, fragmented. Emma." "All right, Emma. You did well. Where is he?" The girl looked around, then burst into tears. "He said my mom asked him to take me. Then he locked me up." I screamed, but no one heard. Collins gripped the radio strap, a choked feeling in his chest. He stood up sharply, his voice hoarse but firm. "Possible abduction. Suspect male, mid-40s, white shirt, tattoos, moving toward gate 14. Lock down the area." The dispatcher's voice immediately replied, "Urgent." "Copy that. All units, code 1 alert. Suspect may be on the move." Outside, the internal loudspeaker blared. "Airport security note. Movement in Terminal C area is temporarily restricted. Please follow staff instructions." The crowd began to buzz, some pulling out phones to record, some fearfully stepping aside. Collins lifted the girl, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. Arrow walked close beside him, his eyes never leaving the doorway, as if still guarding against the abductor's return. Once in the corridor, Collins handed the girl over to the arriving medical personnel, then immediately turned back to Arrow. "Buddy, sniff him out. Find him." Arrow raised his head, taking a deep breath. He moved around the doorway, his nose sweeping close to the tiled floor. After a few seconds, he stopped at a spot, a faint dirty mark like a shoe print and a lingering strange body odor. Arrow inhaled sharply, letting out a soft growl in his throat. His eyes changed to a deep brown, focusing completely. Collins understood immediately he had the scent. "Gate 14, he quickly spoke into the radio. "I repeat, suspect is heading towards gate 14. All units deploy immediately." A young security officer ran up. "Do you need me to go with you?" Collins nodded. "Keep your distance behind. Don't distract Arrow." They began to run. Arrow led the way, moving decisively through the crowded corridor. Collins ran and continuously updated the radio, every turn, every detail. Tourists dodged out of the way, many not understanding what was happening, only seeing the dog darting forward, the leash taut, the officer running close beside him, his face strained. While the pursuit team was moving into position, Collins never took his eyes off Arrow. The dog stopped at a turn near the coffee stand, heavily sniffing the air. Collins recognized the strong scent of perfume mixed with a heavy, pungent, strange smell of sweat. Arrow barked softly twice, the signal confirming the direction of movement. "Let's go," Collins quietly ordered. They turned quickly towards the international exit. Flight lights were flashing ahead. Hundreds of passengers were checking in. Customs officers were continuously scanning passports. At the end of the line, Collins briefly saw a man in a gray jacket, a bag slung over his shoulder, walking fast, his head bowed low. His hair was sweaty. His arm revealed a faint tattoo. Him. Collins didn't have time to call out before Arrow let out a sharp, loud bark that tore through the space. The man turned his head, his eyes flashing with panic. He quickly threw his ticket onto the counter and tried to run. Collins chased, shouting, "Police! Stop right there!" Passengers screamed, backing away to both sides. Arrow darted like an arrow, his forepaws thumping on the tiled floor. Collins heard his heart beating rapidly, matching Arrow's breath. But right then, the commander's voice came over the radio. "Collins, hold your position. Containment team is approaching from the opposite direction. He paused for half a second, gripping the leash tightly. Arrow was still growling, his entire body straining toward the checkpoint. The man disappeared behind the crowd of passengers, but Collins knew he couldn't have left the controlled area yet. He leaned down, patting Arrow's shoulder gently. "Good job, buddy. We'll get him." Arrow didn't take his eyes off the direction of Gate 14. He raised his head, inhaled deeply, his nose continuously twitching. His breathing became heavier, then suddenly lighter. He had completely memorized the abductor's scent, a smell that no matter where he hid, Arrow would find. Collins stood up straight, his eyes gleaming with determination. Outside, red alarm lights flashed, security units tightly surrounding the area. In his heart, there was only one thought. The girl was safe. Now it was his turn to pay the price. Arrow quickly licked his nose, then took another deep breath, his eyes sharp as a knife blade. In that moment, Collins knew the real pursuit had begun. Arrow shot off like an arrow released from a bowstring, his solid body gliding across the airport's glossy floor. Collins ran close behind, one hand holding the radio, the other gripping the leash tightly. The alarm siren from the security speakers blared, making surrounding passengers flinch and move aside. The previously crowded flow of people separated in a flash, creating a long-running path through the terminal. "Control, this is Collins. The suspect is running towards Gate 14. Clear the way, lock down the security gates immediately." He yelled quickly into the radio. The dispatcher's voice came back urgently through the static. "Understood. Units are moving towards you. Be careful. The suspect might be desperate." Arrow led the way, his feet hitting the stone floor as if barely touching it. With every step, his claws made a rapid clop-clop sound. His tail was low, his ears straight up, his breathing shallow, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He barked 3 times, short and decisive, the signal that the target was close. Ahead, Collins saw him, a man wearing a gray jacket, a crossbody bag, pulling a suitcase, his head bowed low. He walked fast, weaving between the people checking in for international flights. From a distance, he looked normal, but the urgency in his every step betrayed everything. Collins yelled out, his voice echoing across the terminal. "Police! Stop right there!" The man paused for a second, then quickly turned his head. His eyes were panicked, bloodshot, as if he knew he had run out of options. Without a word, he violently shoved the suitcase towards Arrow and turned to run away. The heavy suitcase rolled loudly on the floor, hitting straight towards Arrow. But the dog dodged aside, like lightning, then lunged forward on all 4 paws. Collins chased, shouting again, "Stop immediately, you are surrounded." He kept running. Passengers screamed, scattering in confusion. A few people fell while trying to get out of the way. Arrow leaped over chairs, sped past the wall, then launched himself with an incredibly powerful jump. His whole body stretched out, landing right in front of the suspect. A loud thud sound rang out. The man lost his balance, tumbling down, hitting the floor hard, his suitcase bursting open, items scattered everywhere. Collins rushed in, drawing his baton to restrain, shouting, "Hands on your head! Stay down!" The man tried to use his hands to get up, his face contorted with panic. Arrow growled, lowering his body, baring his teeth, ready to lunge again if he moved. His deep brown eyes stared intensely like cutting blades. Collins moved close, lightly kicking the suitcase away. The contents sent a chill down his spine, a roll of plastic zip ties, a children's towel stained with pink chalk, and an airline ticket under a fake name. No doubt about it. He was planning to take the girl with him. "You are under arrest for suspicion of child abduction," Collins said quickly, his voice firm. He still tried to struggle. I didn't do anything." Collins yelled, "Don't lie. The cameras recorded everything." 2 other security officers just ran up, immediately assisting with the restraint. One cuffed his hands, the other searched his pockets. They found a fake ID, along with a few small women's items, hair clips, a child's plastic bracelet. Everything was enough to convict him. Arrow stood by, no longer barking. He only stared at the man, his body rigid, his breathing steady but deep. Collins recognized this as the posture of a dog exercising restraint. He wouldn't bite unless forced to defend himself, but if the man took one more reckless step, Arrow would strike instantly. The crowd around them gradually gathered after realizing the situation was controlled. A few people held up their phones to record, others whispered, "My God, is he the kidnapper? That dog, he was incredibly fast." Collins didn't pay attention. He knelt down, unhooked Arrow's collar, and gently stroked his back. "Good job, buddy. Very well done." Arrow raised his head, panting, his tongue out, but his eyes still vigilant. He looked towards the smashed suitcase, as if to ensure there was no longer any threat. The radio in Collins's hand crackled. "Collins, report situation." He replied concisely. "Suspect apprehended in the international check-in area. No casualties. The girl is safe, currently receiving medical attention." "Understood. Hold position. Investigation team is en route." The man was pulled to his feet. He looked around, seeing all eyes on him, shock, disdain, fear. He trembled, his voice faltering. I just wanted to help the girl." Collins interrupted. "Help by tying her up and taping her mouth shut?" He lowered his head, silent. Another officer pushed him away, his handcuffs securely locked. Arrow still did not take his eyes off him until he was escorted out of sight. Collins watched him go, sighed, then gently patted Arrow's shoulder again. "No one escapes your nose, do they?" A young security officer came to pick up the suitcase. He bent down, pulling out a small folded map, on which a few routes were marked in red pen, intersection points between major cities. Collins felt a chill. He wasn't planning to abduct just one. "Give that map to the investigation team," he said softly. "It needs to be reported immediately." Arrow whined softly, turning his head to look at Collins, as if reminding him. "The girl." He nodded. "I know. We have to go back to her." The two turned back towards the medical area. Passengers automatically made way, a few silently bowing their heads in thanks as Arrow passed. "Bye." Collins said nothing more. He knew the most dangerous part was over, but the most heartbreaking part was just beginning, when the girl would have to recount what had happened. As they walked out of the check-in area, the airport loudspeaker sounded again, the next flight preparing for departure. Life continued. People pulled suitcases, queued up, and called out to each other bustlingly. Only Collins and Arrow walked in silence. The adrenaline rush was still in their blood, but both understood. The fierce barking moments ago had saved a child's life and also made a sick individual pay the price. Collins stopped, looking at Arrow. "We did it." Arrow just wagged his tail slightly, not barking, not growling, his eyes softened but still bright like a flame. Amidst the noisy crowd, the image of the dog standing proudly next to the police officer gradually became a bright spot amidst the chaos. The pursuit ended, but in Arrow's eyes, the image of the villain was still deeply imprinted, his scent, his running steps, and his final fear. He took a deep breath, storing it all in his memory. Because Arrow knew, if another child was in danger, he would run again, through the crowd, through the fear, just like today. The girl was wrapped in a thin blanket from the medical team, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Her breathing was still shaky, her small shoulders subtly shrinking every time she heard the loudspeaker echoing on the ceiling. Collins walked beside her, one hand holding the radio, the other gently supporting her arm. On the other side, Arrow walked close to his feet, his gait slow, his ears slightly drooped as if he was afraid of startling her further. They turned through the long corridor where the white light reflected brightly on the floor. With every step, Collins heard the click-clack of Arrow's claws touching the tile, mixed with the girl's soft footsteps. Everyone along the corridor stopped, silently making way. Some passengers recognized what had happened. Some placed their hands on their chests, some bowed slightly. When they reached the door of the lost and found room, Collins stopped. The medical team pushed the door open first, Inside were few staff members and a woman standing, trembling. Her hair was messy. Her coat was still dusted, her eyes darting everywhere with a desperate look like someone lost. As soon as she saw Collins and Arrow, she almost rushed towards them. "Where is she?" "It's my daughter. It's Emily. Have you seen her?" Her voice broke, faltering with tears. Collins opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, the girl raised her head. Her eyes widened, her lips trembled. Then she suddenly let out a choked cry. "Mommy!" That sound made the room seem to stop. The mother froze for half a second, then screamed, rushing forward as if pulled by instinct. The girl dropped the blanket and ran towards her. The two figures, small and large, collided in the middle of the room, tears bursting out simultaneously, so heartbreakingly that no one could hold back their own. "My baby! Oh God, my child!" The woman held her tightly in her arms, crying and kissing her hair, her cheeks. "I thought you wouldn't find me," the girl sobbed, gripping her mother's coat as if afraid of being separated. Again, Colin stood still at the door, his hand relaxed, his eyes slightly lowered. He had witnessed many reunion scenes, but none had ever felt this heavy in his heart. Arrow sat next to him, his head slightly tilted, watching the mother and daughter. He didn't bark, didn't move, just remained silent, his eyes softened, warm like sunlight filtering through the window pane. A medical staff member walked up, speaking softly. "They are both fine. The girl is only scared, no serious injuries." The mother gently nodded, her eyes still fixed on her daughter. Thank you all." Her voice was shaky, choked in her throat. Behind, someone applauded. Then a second person, a third person. The applause gradually spread throughout the corridor, mixing with the sobs of the bystanders. A middle-aged woman wiped her tears with a handkerchief. A young man murmured, "That dog is amazing." Colin stepped back slightly, trying not to disrupt that sacred moment. He sat down next to Arrow, gently stroking his head. "Good job, buddy," he said softly. "It's all over." Arrow gently licked his hand, then turned to look at the girl, his eyes softened, warm as if smiling. A young officer who had just arrived, panting after assisting with the suspect's arrest, watched the scene and whispered to Collins, "If it weren't for him, we might have found a body instead of a child." Collins was silent for a few seconds, then replied softly, his eyes still on Arrow. "Arrow is never wrong." Inside, the mother and daughter were still, embracing, not letting go. "I was so scared. He said my mom asked that man to pick me up, then he took me away. I didn't know what to do," the girl said through sobs. The mother trembled, holding her daughter tighter. "It's okay now, my girl. Mommy is here." The girl turned her head to look at Arrow, her eyes still red but with a hint of brightness. She left her mother's embrace and walked closer to Collins and the dog. "Officer," she said softly, "your dog saved me." Collins smiled gently, kneeling down to her level. "It wasn't me. It was Arrow." The girl looked at Arrow for a long time, then bent down and hugged his neck. Arrow stood still, not moving, just letting her lean her head on his shoulder. A gentle whine came from his throat, warm and deep, like a sigh of comfort. "Thank you, buddy," the girl said softly. Arrow gently licked her small hand. The mother watched the scene, tears welling up again. She bowed her head to Collins. I don't know what to say to thank you. If it weren't for you, my child." Collins waved his hand, smiling. "We were just doing our job, ma'am." He looked at Arrow. "The credit belongs to him." The mother nodded, her eyes moist. She bent down and placed her trembling hand on Arrow's head. "Thank you, little warrior." Arrow gently flattened his ears, as if he understood her words. The atmosphere in the room softened significantly. The panic, the alarm siren, the fierce barking, all seemed to vanish. Only the warmth of family and Arrow's soft breathing remained, like a peaceful heartbeat after a storm. Another colleague walked in, handing Collins a file and a quick report. "The suspect has been escorted away. There is enough evidence." In his bag, we also found a map marking other cities, like a plan to hunt children. Collins frowned, taking the papers. "Good. Send it to the special investigation team." Make sure he doesn't get another chance. He looked towards Arrow. The dog was still sitting next to the girl, not moving an inch. He smelled him first. If it weren't for Arrow, he probably would have gotten on the plane. The young officer nodded, his eyes still on Arrow. It really is miraculous. He can't talk, but he understands things we never realize. Collins didn't answer. He looked at the girl, seeing her gently smile in her mother's arms. The smile was still, shaky, but real, the first smile after the horrifying hours. A while later, the medical team suggested taking the mother and daughter to the airport's psychological support center. As they left, the girl looked back, waving at Arrow. "Goodbye, hero dog." Arrow tilted his head, giving a soft bark, as if returning the greeting. When the elevator door closed, Collins stood there for a moment, saying nothing. He looked down at his four-legged friend sitting next to him, then gently patted his neck. "You did great, old friend." Another child made it home. Arrow raised his head, inhaled deeply, then leaned his head against Collins's leg, his eyes sparkling in the dim light. The two companions stood there, in the quiet corridor after the chaos. Outside, the late afternoon sun filtered through the window pane, shining on Arrow's gray-brown fur, reflecting a warm golden glow. Collins spoke softly, his voice low and deep. "The light after the storm is always the most beautiful, isn't it, buddy?" Arrow didn't answer, just gently wagged his tail, as if agreeing. And in that moment, amidst the noisy world of humans, the image of the police officer and the dog sitting silently together became a symbol of something simple yet sacred. There are heroes who don't need titles, don't need applause, they just need to save a life, and that is enough. The abductor was escorted out of the main hall, his head bowed, his hands tightly cuffed. The red and blue lights of the police car swept continuously across his face, casting flickering patterns of light and shadow. He no longer struggled, just shuffled between the two officers, muttering incoherently. Passengers on both sides of the corridor were silent. No one spoke. All just watched, their faces mixed with fear and indignation. Arrow stood a few meters away, silently observing the scene. No barking, no growling, and no moving closer. His whole body stood straight, his head slightly bowed, his eyes cold but calm. In those brown eyes was the clear-headedness of someone who understood that the mission was complete. He had been caught, the child was saved, and the airport had returned to peace. Collins walked up, his hand still holding the loose leash on Arrow's collar. The flashing lights shone on his gray-brown coat, making the dog's silhouette stand out in the crowded corridor. A few security personnel walking by nodded gently at Arrow, their eyes full of gratitude. From the end of the hall, small footsteps sounded. The girl, Emily, was led by her mother, her hand still clutching an old teddy bear. Her face was less pale, her eyes still swollen but shining with emotion. When she saw Arrow, she let go of her mother's hand and ran slowly closer. Arrow recognized her immediately, his ears subtly perked up, his body gently straining. Emily stopped in front of him, bending down. She clutched the bear in one hand, the other gently touched Arrow's head. Her voice was small but clear. "You saved me. Thank you." Arrow didn't respond, just gently bowed his head and wagged his tail slightly, his eyes softened. He gently inhaled the girl's scent, as if confirming that she was truly safe. Collins stood behind, witnessing the moment with a lump in his throat. He had been through many missions, but never had an action moved him so deeply. The mother walked over, placing her hand on her daughter's shoulder, saying softly, "You have to thank the officer too." Emily looked up, smiling at Collins. "Thank you, and Arrow. I will always remember you." Collins bent down, replying in a warm, low voice. "You don't have to thank us. You were very brave. You were the one who reached out for help. Arrow was just the first to hear it." The girl laughed softly, then quickly hugged Arrow's neck again. Arrow stood still, letting her hold him tightly in her small embrace. He let out a soft whine, gentle as a reply. "It's okay. You're safe now." A moment later, the police vehicles rolled out, taking the abductor away from the airport. The automatic door closed, the red and blue lights gradually faded. The peaceful atmosphere returned, leaving only Collins, Arrow, and the bystanders still standing in silence. Collins sighed deeply, bending down to stroke his companion's head. "Let's go home, Hero." Arrow raised his head, his eyes shining in the faint golden light of the late day. He wagged his tail once, then walked beside Collins. The two figures, one man, one dog, strode slowly through the wide corridor, where the afternoon sun was slanting through the window pane. On the glossy stone floor, their shadows stretched long, merging into one. Behind them, a few passengers still watched. One person quietly saying, "That police dog is truly miraculous." Another replied, "He's not just a dog, he's a hero." Collins didn't hear, or perhaps he didn't need to hear. He just continued, walking, his hand gently placed on Arrow's shoulder, quietly saying, "Good job, buddy." They disappeared behind the glass door, reflecting the sunset sky. The late afternoon sunlight cast a golden glow. On the ground, on the security unit sign, on Collins's coat, and on Arrow's thick fur. Everything seemed to pause for a moment, silently and warmly. And somewhere in that silence, people understood that, amidst the noisy world, amidst the voices and chaotic sounds, there are still silent hearts that can hear what others cannot. A look, a bark, an instinct, sometimes it's enough to save a life. Arrow didn't need a medal, didn't need applause. For him, just being with the person he trusted, protecting the weaker ones, that was the greatest reward. The afternoon light faded, leaving behind the image of a police officer and his loyal dog leaving the terminal. And when the glass door closed, the outside world continued to be noisy as before. Only the lingering echo of that afternoon remained. A small story about loyalty, the instinct to save, and a hero who needed no words.